I would like to invite to the microphone Volodymyr Petukovka, head of the Center for the Restoration of Personnel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome. Thanks for your invitation. These days, it's a very infrequent experience that we can meet each other offline. Our topic is extremely specific, unusual in many ways. And unfortunately, our paths cross not very often at some meetings, conference calls, and the pretexts are not very nice. However, today I would like to speak about the experience of our center. I thank Ms. Tatiana a lot because she has already spoken about the analysis of all of the drawbacks that we have within our system. So with your permission, I'll skip that. And instead, I will be speaking about what is going on right now in the armed forces of Ukraine. This work started, of course, a long time ago. Recently, the topic of torture and providing assistance to those who have been in captivity is a fascinating topic for me. Back in 2019, 98, 1999, I got interested in that, and it was based on the experience that we had back in the day on the Balkan experience. You are all aware, Sphere, the publication house. This was the first place where I got experience about that. There were specialists providing psychosocial support for people affected by those events. Something which is close to our reality, unfortunately, today. Then, in 2014, when I was in Lugansk region in Sector A, I participated in the first prisoner exchanges. As Ms. Tatiana said, they were very spontaneous, with militants, with monetary ransoms. So this was very dubious reputation, but still we managed to get the people back. We communicated with them. But the work in the armed forces was not carried out in a professional way. Once again, everything was done in a very spontaneous way, more or less. Psychologists were not that many. Most of the time, NGOs were dealing with that. The next stage that followed in my career, which is closely connected to our topic today, is 2013, when I got to an agency responsible for recovery of the military personnel at the Ministry of Armed Forces of the US. And there we were familiarized with the system of reintegration. And then this word entered firmly our circulation, not as a ministry of reintegrating temporarily occupied territories, but reintegration is the main type of activity when liberating military personnel from captivity, because this system spreads hostages and civilians who unfortunately were taken prisoner by different militant groups and gangs. Now, our political leaders and activists are referring a lot to NATO standards, and of course I will be doing the same. We have these standards in place since 2016, which is not so long ago. We have planted this doctrine about recovering of our personnel. They are guided by its principles, and this covers a great number of different principles and standards. And unlike civilian life, military personnel's life is covered very thoroughly, starting with training and all the way to their time in captivity, the procedure of their liberation from captivity, and the assistance rendered after captivity. Basically, our activities nowadays are not covering all of the standards provided for by the procedures and organizations which represent the best global experiences. But we have some 80% of all that planted in our activities, because we skip the element of searching for the missing persons. You know that there are other responsible, the special center and the coordination center, which is responsible for the treatment of the prisoners of war. in order to coordinate the interagency activities. But as you can see, we are dealing, the major type of our activity is reintegration processes and post-isolation support assistance. So this is something that we are giving to people after they're discharged from different kinds of captivity facilities, so that the people can continue their rehabilitation in line with their medical condition.
Я не буду зупинятися на наших
I will not talk a lot about the tasks. If you are interested in that, you can take a picture, but this is what we think our goals are. Here, you see organizations that are part of looking of people, for people bringing our military personnel back. It's so good that we are all in touch and that we do all we can to make sure people come back. This is the most important slide here because it explains our work. Our center was established last year officially in June. As of today, the team that started working in 2021, this was the first exchanges that we worked with. They were in September. So we had more than 1,100 people from the military personnel. That's not counting civilians and some other forces as well. So this is some figures, but it's difficult. It's difficult for the specialists as well. Some had to leave. Some couldn't because working with this topic is very difficult. Documenting crimes, consequences of crimes, the experience of being in captivity, too hard. But we have our core, and right now we can work as a team that is quite capable. For example, we now get the news that our center will grow and we will become more powerful. Here you see this reintegration cycle. It's very simple and very complicated at the same time. There were many questions about terminology because we have a decree by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine on post-isolation and reintegration measures. We had a lot of questions about reintegration, rehabilitation, bringing them together or separating them. A lot of people think that reintegration equals rehabilitation. It's not so. Reintegration is the process helping a person to switch from the situation of captivity to normal life. Do decompression, another new word for us, do post-isolation. Decompression, learn how to regain control of their lives and go back to their social functioning, to their families. So this is, well, if we take the whole life of a person, quite a short process that they have to go through. In our experience, what do we get? We have data that show that people who went through the process of reintegration fully, because sometimes we can't influence the situation, we don't get enough resources, human resources, material, technical resources, so it is not always full. But if a person went through a full process of reintegration, then further rehabilitation, post-isolation, recovery, adaptation goes very much faster. The system of reintegration was suggested by our Western colleagues based on the resilience theory. I think the word that we all know. You all had a training in resilience. I mean, psychologists did. And the theory says that psyche has resources for recovery. We do not disable people who come back from captivity. And I will tell you that 90% of those who come back were tortured, were put under pressure. Of course, that has to be understood. So, if the person went through this reintegration properly, it will take quite a short time to come back to normal life. Of course, there will be flashbacks with some post-traumatic consequences. You know yourselves, even childhood traumas will be worked with psychologists much later. And that's without torture or accidents or something else. So it's a process of how our psyche bounces back. So what we have here is this notion of reintegration, which is not rehabilitation. It does not equal rehabilitation. It's not the first stage of rehabilitation. It's not decompression, which can be part of rehabilitation. Reintegration is a process which helps a person recover and come back to life and provides an opportunity to take back control over their lives. That's all we do here. You see that as the military personnel, we are not only interested about the psychological experience that people had. It is very important that the military personnel have this experience of being in captivity and will learn from this experience and do retraining. And we learn will help other people who may get in captivity survive it with dignity. After reintegration, the primary process is post-isolation follow-up. It's a difficult process, needs a lot of material resources, and it's a multidisciplinary activity. We work with Lisova Polyana here, with NGOs, civil society organizations. I hope we will have more cooperation with communities, better coordination with them. You understand that military service is finite. People don't serve all of their lives. They come back to the society sooner or later. So communication with the society, creation of institutions, and this atmosphere of how these people are received, the people who come back from captivity, avoiding stigmatization. This is what is important. I think that we have people here who understand that captivity is necessarily a negative factor in a person's life and something which cannot be changed. But among other layers of society, this is how people see it, even the military themselves. However, we need to remember that captivity is one of the risks. Apart from that, we have maiming and death. So these are the three primary risks of military service. And when people come to military service and they start fighting, all of these three risks are present. So we need to change the paradigm, the attitude. We need to change stigmatization. And this is something which we still need to do. It's very difficult for the armed forces to rely only on the public sector. Well, there is a lot that we need to do here. I think it's quite understood. You understand who does what within the system. And the system that we are building right now basically is reflected in this scheme. Sometimes it's easier, simpler, sometimes it's more complicated, but this is the general trend. So, since we train the military, we understand that this stage is very important. We don't just collect information about people who have the experience of captivity. We always say that they are experts because we may collect all the data we want. We are no experts. We never survived that. A psychologist will never know the problem of the client 100%. It's only the client who knows that. Same is with POWs. We can talk about psychological trauma, torture, consequences of torture, but each case is different, and it will very much depend on the individuality of every person. What we can control is what we do, what kind of methods we use or instruments we use to bring them back to life. So for the military, it's very important that the system works, that the military personnel are trained appropriately, because we do document crimes. We send the materials to the prosecution general as to what we are able to fix. I think that I'm coming to conclusion, and I will say that as of now, the system of reintegration within the armed forces meets international standards, what we find in international organizations. These organizations are very interested in our experience. We have something different. We fight on our land, and we're the only country that does it. The number of people who come back from captivity is huge. No other country has such experience or has had it since the World War II. And we bring people from captivity at the time of war. They don't come back to a peaceful country. They come back to a country at war, and they continue their military service. They're being constantly attacked. And psychologists say that you have to find a safe place. Okay, that will be very difficult to do it, and you have to live with it. But these are strong people because they try to find their place, and I hope that the system, everyone who is here, will do their best to make sure that our military feel your support and your respect and your help. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Vladimir, do we have a question? Yes, let's take one question and we go on. I know it's unpopular. People will hate me now because they will all want to go to a break. But I had to say that. I want all of us to say thank you to Vladimir. All of us who are here and who are online, just give him a huge round of applause. What we find here is a systematic, evidence-based work integrating services, and this is a very good chain. It didn't just happen. I know how much effort, Vladimir, you put into that, how many doors you had to knock on, how much you had to do. And I hope that this round of applause inspires you to continue. I hope it's easier for you. And I have one story. I just couldn't sit there. I had to share it. I visited Volodymyr's center, right after an exchange. And one of the services that you talked about here is renewing documents, something social. And I just wanted to say that you have protocols, but you also have to have a heart. And Vladimir's colleague said that, tomorrow we will get together with the girls who came from the captivity and have a photo shoot for passports. I have to go very quickly to this locality where they are situated. It's urgent because we have to go to hairdressers to have their hair dyed, to manicure, see what has to be done to their glasses. And that's important. This is just so, so important.